Hi there, welcome to IndyCar today on, oh goodness me, what day is it today? It's early in the morning for me. Okay, so it is the 3rd today, right? So it's the 3rd of April and we now have another Brexit delay. Mrs May has now decided she wants a longer delay to the 22nd of May, which is basically as far as you can go before you run into the European elections. Why has she asked for this? Well, she says she wants to talk to Jeremy Corbyn to find a way forward, but not on the divorce deal. The divorce deal is non-negotiable, but on the future arrangements, the future trading arrangements with the European Union. Now, why she wants this is anybody's guess, but she could just have carried on banging her head off the wall with the trade deal and trying to get her MPs to vote it through. This deal with Jeremy Corbyn is some kind of attempt to unite the House of Parliament behind one thing, which is if they vote for her deal, the Labour Party will get a say in what the final trading arrangement is. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it? It sounds like perhaps there might be some consensus up ahead. But ask yourself this, if one of my viewers this morning, Grant Perry, pointed something out to me, which I think may have occurred to many other people. It certainly has crossed my mind a few times, but I've always kind of dismissed it. We tend to look at Brexit here in Scotland from our own point of view, that Scotland is being forced against its will to leave the European Union, and that England is the country which wants Brexit, and they're prepared just to steamroll over us to get that. Excuse me. But what if that isn't actually the case? What if all of these delays that we're seeing, pardon me, I'm going all Theresa May here this morning. Excuse me, that's better, right? It's a frog in the throat. No, but what if these delays are not actually delays at all? What if the reason for these delays is not what they're telling us, but is actually because the British government knows full well that England will not be able to survive post-Brexit without Scotland's resources and without Scotland's taxes, without our oil, our gas, our renewable energy, our whisky revenues, our export revenues. Now, what if that is really the case? Because one thing that's true is that Ian Blackford down in London has made it plain all the way through this battle that Scotland is not going to be taken out of the European Union against its will. They're not going to allow it to happen, and we'll have a referendum on independence rather than let that happen. So this threat of the independence referendum has been hanging over the Tories all the way through Brexit, and at every cut and turn they have procrastinated, delayed again. They've had votes on this and votes on that. They can't decide on this. Nobody can agree about anything in the Westminster Parliament except Scotland. Scotland has always been, right from the beginning, anti-Brexit, nailed its colours to the mast right at the start. We're not having anything to do with Brexit, and you can't make us. Now that has put a stick through the spokes of the Brexit bicycle, because without Scotland, the Tories realise now that they have to make Brexit work without all those resources, without 90% of the oil revenues, without about 60% of the gas in the North Sea, and without all the renewable energy which Scotland is currently piping into England to keep its economy afloat, to keep it powered up with electricity which it lacks the capacity to generate. So is it possible, do you think, that the real reason that Brexit is not happening is because Scotland will not go along with it? Now, if that's the case, and it's true that they can't make Brexit work without Scotland, surely to God you would think they would want Nicola Sturgeon down in Whitehall right now to negotiate with Theresa May, to say what Scotland would be able to thole, would be able to stand in terms of Brexit. But actually, what Scotland has been saying is that it's not going to be taken out of the European Union, and that it wants to do everything in its power to stop Brexit. And it might well be that it's succeeded, because if you look at the evidence before you, this is the second delay. We should have Brexited already by now. It should have been done. And we've asked for one delay, and they still can't decide anything. Now they're asking for another delay, which takes it right down to the wire. And that means that on the 22nd of May, Britain will either have to say we are Brexiting and we're voting for Mrs May's deal and we're going to negotiate a trade deal, or they cancel it. because there isn't anything else that they can do. Scotland has been not bluffing, but basically just saying right from the beginning, we are not going to Brexit with you. And that has forced the United Kingdom to look very hard at its own economy and say, well, are we strong enough to Brexit by ourselves? Can we make it without Scotland's gigantic contribution? Because Scotland does make a gigantic contribution in terms of its export earnings, its foreign currency earnings, which are vital to the UK's ability to borrow. Because without those foreign currency earnings, the pound is worth less and less all the time. And if it's worth less, when you borrow that money, you have to borrow more of it because it doesn't buy so much. So Scotland is essential to keeping the British economy at the level it's at now. If we leave, we are going to take all of our export earnings with us. We're going to take all of our oil and gas revenues with us, the ones that we have a geographical right to, and that is everything pretty much from Berwick-on-Tweed all the way up and around the coast of Scotland, not to mention a good bit of the Irish Sea as well. So, what we're saying here is that it could well be that the reason Brexit's not happening is because of us. Rather than us being the victims here, maybe we've actually got the whip hand here. And I think Grant Perry makes a very good point. We've been looking at this entirely the wrong way. We are the ones who have the power over Brexit, not the UK. The UK doesn't want to admit this, but Scotland is a problem for them. And if Scotland does not come along for the ride on Brexit, it probably will be very difficult for the United Kingdom to survive Brexit. And if it exits without a deal, it would be catastrophic for the UK, because we know that if there's any kind of Brexit at all, Scotland will be voting on independence. And the likelihood is at the moment that about 60 or more % of Scots will vote to become independent, so that they avoid that Brexit fate, and so that we can continue with our trading success, our exporting, and the growth and the wealth that's being generated in the Scottish economy. Remember, the growth rate in Scotland at the moment is twice that of the UK. Now you've got to ask yourself, why is that? That's because people want to invest in Scotland because they know that Scotland isn't going to exit the EU. Whereas in England, that kind of investment has dried up and people are bailing out of England. Companies are upping sticks and moving to Ireland. They're moving to the continent, rather than stay in Brexited Britain. So my question now is, and based on what Grant Perry was talking about this morning in his message to me, is it us that have the whip hand? And if we do, why are we not using it to negotiate our exit from the UK, in exchange for which we can do a trade deal with the UK which will help them stay afloat after Brexit? We have all the cards here, we're just not playing them properly. If we have the whip hand, if we are the reason why the UK cannot push the door open and exit the EU, if that's the case, what will it take for the UK to give us our independence? What kind of deal are they prepared to do with us? And that, I think, has got to be the question that Nicola Sturgeon puts to Theresa May. Never mind Jeremy Corbyn, he is a part of the problem. Corbyn wants Brexit as well, his party wants Brexit as well. Every party in the UK except the Greens and the SNP and Plaid Cymru, all the other parties want Brexit. But if we're the reason, if we're the stumbling block to it, then we have the ability to decide what happens next and to dictate what the next play should be. Not the Democratic Unionist Party. Their chance at being the kingmakers was squandered. They've used it up and they don't have any more power now. They have abstained from voting. They have not supported the Tory party despite having been bribed by £1 billion. They're still not playing ball with the Tories. But that hasn't stopped Brexit happening in Northern Ireland. It's still going to happen. But it can only happen if we agree to it. So this is the point where I think our own First Minister has to go down to London and say to Theresa May, what is it that you would take in return for us being independent? Tell me now and we'll arrange it. And all she has to do is do that deal. So if that deal was, let us say it was for us to negotiate a proportion of our oil to England, in other words, to basically trade that for our independence, we would still be sitting pretty, because we're still going to be flooded with oil revenues that are left over. We've got enough in the tank there to last for about 100 years. And it's probably 10 times as much oil revenue there than we can actually use anyway. So why not bargain with it? I know a lot of people say, why give anything to England? Why give anything to anybody when they've treated us so badly? The reason that we want to do this is so that we exit the UK smoothly with a trade deal with the United Kingdom for after we've left the United Kingdom, so that we can stay in the EU and we can decide how we trade with England afterwards. England can then go its own way, do its own thing. It will be severely weakened, but it will be able to support itself. Scotland, on the other hand, will be a tiny bit weakened by trading away some of its oil, but we'll still have everything else. And this is where we're at the moment. It's time the Scottish government got a bit of backbone and went down there and said, look, you want Brexit, we can deliver it, but it's going to cost you. Let's do a deal. And that's all it would take. That would break the deadlock. Brexit could happen. Scotland could leave the UK. Everybody gets what they want. The oil is a bargaining chip. It always was a bargaining chip. And the British government has tried to minimise the value of oil ever since just before the last referendum. But we know that not only is there oil in the North Sea, but there's even more oil west of Shetland. There's more oil down the west coast of Scotland. There's more oil in the Clyde Basin. There's oil everywhere. We're surrounded by it. We're floating on it. We are not going to be short of oil. We can trade some of it in order to do a deal with England. And that's what I wanted to say today. Grant Perry's right. I think we're looking at this from the wrong direction. We have to stop playing the victims here and start deciding what happens next. Remember what I said to you a long time ago? Whoever acts first controls the outcome of the situation. Time for us to act first. I'll see you later. Bye-bye for now.